I paid for my sister's wedding, but she said my face would ruin her perfect day. I was scrolling through my phone on a quiet Tuesday evening, halfway through a microwave burrito that had the texture of a damp sponge, when I saw it. A post, bright and cheerful, sitting at the top of my feed like a slap in the face. It was my sister Jessica's latest update, a digital invitation to her wedding. The caption read, "All invitations sent. Can't wait to celebrate with all my loved ones." My heart stopped mid-chew. I hadn't received an invitation. My first thought was that it had gotten lost. The mail can be unreliable sometimes, right? Maybe the envelope had been misplaced or delivered to the wrong address. I tried to brush off the sinking feeling as paranoia, but my gut knew better. I read the caption again. "All invitations sent. Jessica and I had always been close, or at least I thought we were. I was the one she called in the middle of the night when she needed a ride home from a party she wasn't supposed to be at. The one who spent hours taste-testing cakes with her because she couldn't decide between red velvet and carrot. More recently, I've been the one who helped fund this very wedding. Thousands of dollars I didn't really have, just to make sure her big day was perfect. Deposit for the venue? Paid by me. Caterer? I fronted the bill. Wedding dress? I helped cover the last payment when she was in tears about the cost. I told myself there had to be an explanation, so I sent her a text. "Hey, I didn't get an invite. Maybe it got lost in the mail." I stared at the screen for a few minutes before the 3 dots appeared. My chest tightened as I waited for her response. "We had a limited guest list," she wrote back. "And, well, you just don't really fit the vibe. I know you'll be happy for me from afar." I read the message twice, hoping the words might change if I gave them enough time. Limited guest list? Didn't fit the vibe? I'd helped pay for this wedding, and I didn't fit the vibe? A wave of heat rushed to my face. My hands trembled as I locked my phone and tossed it onto the couch. It landed face down, but I could still feel the weight of her words pressing down on me. Memories flooded my mind. The nights spent listening to her gush about floral arrangements, the weekends I gave up to meet with vendors she didn't have time for, and now I wasn't even welcome to watch her walk down the aisle. The burrito sat cold and forgotten on my plate. I poked at it with my fork, half expecting it to poke back. I couldn't shake the image of her dancing with her new husband, laughing, surrounded by family and friends. While I watched from a distance, like some stranger, the anger simmered, mixing with the hurt in a toxic swirl. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Sleep was impossible that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind tangled in knots. The words from Jessica's message kept looping in my head. "You don't really fit the vibe." The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started to fall into place. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was never just about the wedding. Growing up, I was always the odd one out. The accident when I was 14 left a jagged scar running from my eyebrow to my jawline, a permanent reminder of that summer day I lost control of my bike and skidded face first across the pavement. My family had treated it like an embarrassment rather than an injury. "That scar will scare people away," my mom said once, half joking but not really. Jessica took that as her cue to start the endless teasing. "With that face, your career options are pretty limited," she said when I told her I wanted to open my own auto repair shop. "Guess it makes sense. You'll be under cars where no one can see you." I built that shop from the ground up, poured my sweat, time, and every spare dollar into it. It's not some grease-stained garage with flickering lights. It's a clean, well-run business with solid reviews, loyal customers, and enough work to keep me and my 3 employees busy year-round. We even sponsored the local 4th of July parade last summer, handing out coupons with tiny American flags to the kids. But in my family's eyes, I was still just a guy with the scar who turned wrenches for a living. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I needed answers. Real answers. I grabbed my keys and drove to my parents' house across town, the familiar sight of their perfectly manicured lawn, the garden gnome dressed in a faded Yankees cap, and the oversized American flag, swaying by the front porch, greeted me like a scene from a commercial. I parked down the block and walked up the driveway. The closer I got, the more I regretted not giving myself more time to cool off. But then I heard voices drifting from the open kitchen window. "I just don't want him there," Jessica said. Her tone was sharp, laced with frustration. "He's family," Mom responded, though without much conviction. "Yeah, but he'll ruin the whole vibe," Jessica shot back. "I don't want people whispering about the guy with the prison break face." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my pulse quicken, my breath catching in my throat. "You know how he is," Mom said, her voice dropping slightly. "Always looking like he just crawled out from under a car." "Exactly," Jessica agreed. "And his weird jokes? No thanks. I don't want people feeling uncomfortable." I stood there, frozen on the spot. Part of me wanted to march in and defend myself, to list every damn thing I'd done for that wedding. Another part of me just wanted to disappear. But instead, I stepped to the front door. Their faces snapped toward me like they'd seen a ghost. Jessica's eyes widened, while Mom's mouth formed a tight line. "I heard everything," I said. My voice was calm, steadier than I felt inside. I didn't know my presence would be such a burden. Mom crossed her arms and shifted uncomfortably. "Mike, we were just honest." "Yeah, I got that." Jessica shrugged. "It's my day. I just want it to be perfect." "Perfect," I repeated softly, the word tasting bitter. "Got it." Without another word, I turned and left. My mother called after me, but I didn't stop. I got in my car, gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, and drove away. As I pulled into my driveway, I realized something cold and hard had settled in my chest. They were never going to see me as more than a scar with a toolbox. And I was done trying to prove otherwise. Sleep didn't come easy that night again. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it lazily spun, each creak of the blades matching the restless rhythm of my thoughts. My family's words echoed in my head. Prison break face, not the right vibe, just crawled out from under a car. The bitterness sat like a rock in my chest. I tried to push the thoughts aside, but memories kept creeping in. Every Christmas when Jessica got the spotlight, while I was the designated fixer of broken toys. Every time Mom dismissed my business like it was a hobby and not a thriving auto shop that paid better than Dad's old office job ever did. And every single dollar I'd handed over for this wedding, hoping, stupidly, that maybe, just maybe, this time I'd be part of the inner circle. The phone buzzed on my nightstand. I reached for it, hoping for anything to distract me. A notification from Jessica popped up. "Don't forget to pay the bakery. The cake's due Friday." "No, thank you. No, please." Just another bill she expected me to cover. My thumb hovered over the screen. For years, I'd bent over backward for this family, always trying to earn a spot at their table. But here I was, uninvited to the very wedding I'd helped finance. My jaw tightened. Enough. I typed out a response. "Sorry, Jess, but I can't help with the cake. Good luck." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The weight on my chest shifted. Not gone, but different. Lighter. Liberating. I considered grabbing a leftover slice of cold pizza from the fridge, my go-to-midnight snack, but settled for the satisfaction of finally standing my ground. The phone lit up almost immediately. One missed call, then another. A string of texts followed. "Jessica, are you kidding me? You promised." "Jessica, you can't just bail now." "Jessica, this is family." 12 missed calls later, I finally muted my phone and tossed it aside. The silence was blissful. The next morning, I found Mom's name on my screen. I sighed and answered. "Michael," she began, her voice already laced with disappointment. "What is this nonsense about the cake?" "I'm not paying for it, Mom," I said. "I've already paid more than enough. But it's your sister's wedding. Family helps each other out. I took a deep breath, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. Family doesn't exclude the people who help them. Family doesn't treat someone like a backup generator. Only useful when needed. Her shocked silence filled the line. I imagined her sitting in the kitchen, clutching her ever-present coffee cup that said, "World's Best Mom," struggling to find the right words to guilt me into compliance. "This is going to embarrass us," she finally said. "You mean embarrass Jessica?" I corrected. "Mike, don't be selfish." "Selfish?" I barked out a humorless laugh. "I've paid for the venue, the caterer, half the dress, and I'm not even invited. How exactly am I the selfish one here?" Another silence. Then she sighed. "We just want everything to go smoothly." "Yeah, well," I said, "so do I. But I'm done being the family ATM." I hung up before she could respond. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally taking control. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Jessica. "You're ruining my big day. Hope you're happy." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "I hope you have a beautiful wedding, Jess. But this time, you're on your own." The phone didn't ring after that. The silence was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. Like standing in an empty stadium after the game ends, when the crowd and the noise are gone, and all that's left is you and the echo of what used to be. The morning after my showdown with Mom and Jessica, I arrived at my auto shop early. The scent of motor oil and fresh coffee grounded me, a sharp contrast to the emotional whirlwind from the night before. I grabbed my travel mug, filled with that burnt but comforting diner blend from Joe's coffee shack down the street, and headed into the garage, where the rhythmic clanking of tools already filled the air. By mid-morning, I was underneath a Ford Explorer, wrestling with a rusted exhaust pipe, when I heard the unmistakable sound of high heels clicking against the concrete floor. Only one person in my life wore heels to a mechanic's shop, my mother. I slid out from under the car, grease-streaked and sweaty. Mom stood near the reception desk, her arms crossed and nose wrinkled in distaste. She glanced around the shop as if expecting grime to leap onto her designer purse. "Morning, Mom," I greeted, wiping my hands on a rag. She didn't return the pleasantry. "This is where you spend your time." "Pays the bills," I said, forcing a smile. Her gaze swept over the neatly organized toolboxes, the certifications hanging on the wall, and the waiting area with its mismatched chairs and half-empty candy dish. The radio crackled softly in the background, playing classic rock hits from the 70s. "I suppose," she said, sounding unconvinced. "What brings you here?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Jessica's devastated," she said, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "Her wedding is in shambles because of you." "Pretty sure she's still got a venue, a caterer, and a dress," I said. "Sounds like a wedding to me." Mom's lips thinned. "The cake, Michael. She needs that cake. You know how important presentation is. People will talk." I snorted and leaned against the tool bench. "People are already talking, Mom. Just not about the cake." Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't funny. Your sister is suffering. Her big day is being overshadowed by your stubbornness." "No," I said evenly. "It's being overshadowed by her decision to cut me out." "Family helps each other," she said, voice trembling with indignation. I held her gaze. "I already helped. More than enough. She excluded me from the wedding, so I'm excluding her from my wallet." The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Finally, Mom adjusted the strap of her purse and turned toward the door. "You will regret this," she said over her shoulder. The glass door swung shut behind her, leaving behind the faint scent of her floral perfume mixed with motor oil. I stood there for a long moment, the weight of her words pressing down like the hydraulic lift above me. The calm didn't last long. The day after Mom's visit, I was halfway through rotating the tires on a Subaru Outback when my phone buzzed on the tool cart. I wiped my hands on my jeans and picked it up. A notification from Jessica's social media account glared back at me. The post was simple, just white text on a black background. "When the people you trust the most betray you, Hashtag family drama, hashtag wedding nightmare. The comments section was already ablaze. Stay strong, Jess. Some people just don't know what family means. Wow! Who would do that to their own sister? I ran a hand through my hair and set the phone down. Of course, she'd made it public. Jessica never missed a chance to play the victim, like a contestant on a reality show fishing for sympathy. Not 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my cousin Tyler. "Yo, Mike," he said when I answered. "What the hell, man? I just saw Jess's post. You really bailed on paying for the wedding cake." I exhaled slowly. "Yeah, Ty." I said no to the cake. "But let me guess. She didn't mention the venue, the caterer, the dress, or the months I spent helping plan everything." "Wait, you paid for all that?" "Every dime," I said. "And then she uninvited me from the wedding because I don't fit the vibe." Tyler let out a low whistle. "Man, that's messed up." "Yeah," I said. "So, no cake money this time. I'm done being their personal aid." There was a pause. "You know what? I'm on your side, cuz. My mom's been ranting about it, but if that's how it went down, yeah, screw that." "Appreciate it," I said, feeling a flicker of relief. By lunchtime, my phone had turned into a war zone. The family group chat, which had been mostly cat videos and birthday reminders, was now a battleground. My phone buzzed like an alarm clock someone forgot to turn off on a Saturday morning. "Aunt Linda, family sticks together, Mike. You should be ashamed. Uncle Rob. If you'd seen how they treated Mike, you'd be singing a different tune, Linda. Cousin Sarah. Wait, didn't Mike pay for most of the wedding already?" I put the phone down again and went back to work, but the notifications kept coming. Every ding felt like a jab to the ribs. It wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. It was a full-blown scandal. By the time I closed the shop that evening, I was exhausted and not from the work. I scrolled through the dozens of missed messages. Jessica had posted again. "Imagine being abandoned by your own brother right before the happiest day of your life. Hashtag wedding disaster. Hashtag some people are the worst." The comments were more heated this time. "Wow, maybe she should have invited him if she wanted his money. I heard he paid for the whole thing except the cake. Sounds like she just wanted a free ride." I shook my head, torn between frustration and grim amusement. Jessica's attempt to rally support was backfiring. People were asking questions she didn't want answered. Then came the text from Mom. "Enough of this nonsense. We need to talk. Now." I stared at the message, the weight of it settling in my chest like the final note of a bad country song. I knew what was coming, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house, the tires crunching over the gravel like brittle bones. The familiar white shutters and perfectly trimmed hedges greeted me with a false sense of nostalgia. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, gathering the patience I knew I'd need. The text from Mom, "Come by after work. We need to talk," still glared at me from the lock screen. It felt like seeing a dentist appointment you forgot about. Nothing good ever followed that message. As I walked up the steps, the door swung open before I could knock. Jessica stood there, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. "Took you long enough," she said, stepping aside to let me in. I bit back a sarcastic reply and walked past her into the living room. The house smelled of lemon cleaner and desperation. New hardwood floors gleamed under the overhead lights. The beige couch I remembered from childhood had been replaced by an oversized sectional that screamed expensive. A massive flat-screen TV dominated the wall, tuned to some mindless home renovation show. "Nice renovations," I said, motioning toward the floors. Jessica snorted. "Yeah, Mom and Dad wanted a house to look nice for when guests come over. Guess they didn't mind spending money on that," I said. Unlike the wedding, her jaw tightened. "Look, Mike, can we just get to the point?" "By all means," I said, dropping onto the couch. It was as stiff as it looked. She perched on the armrest across from me, tapping her manicured nails against her knee. "If I invite you to the wedding, will you pay for the cake?" The question hit me like a bucket of cold water. "That's why I'm here. The bakery needs a deposit by tomorrow," she said, her voice sweetened with artificial charm. "If you cover it, you can come." I laughed, a full, unfiltered laugh that echoed through the room. "So that's the price of family now? A wedding cake." Her eyes narrowed. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You did that when you uninvited me. Now you're dangling a ticket like I'm some backup guest. Why don't you ask Mom and Dad for the money?" Jessica shifted uncomfortably. "They can't. They spent a lot on the house. Plus, Dad just got the new SUV. "Of course," I said, chuckling. "Because why ask your parents when you've got a brother with a toolbox and a checkbook, right? Priorities." Her face flushed. "You know how much this wedding means to me." "Yeah," I said, standing. "And you know how little I mean to you. I don't need your invitation, Jess. Enjoy your big day. But you'll do it without me. And without my money." I turned and walked toward the door, her angry protest fading behind me. As I stepped into the cool evening air, the porch light clicked on, casting my shadow long across the lawn. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked into the night, filling the silence. And for the first time in a long time, I walked away from that house without feeling small. The morning of Jessica's wedding dawned with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you want to curl up with a pumpkin spice latte and pretend the world isn't on fire. Somewhere in the distance, a leaf blower droned like a lazy wasp. I was at the shop, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug plastered with "World's Okayest Mechanic," when my phone started buzzing like a hornet's nest. First, it was Tyler. "Dude, have you seen what's happening?" he asked, his voice a mix of shock and amusement. "No," I said, already bracing myself. "What now?" "They showed up at the venue," he said, stifling a laugh, "and the doors are locked. Place is shut down. There's a crowd of people standing outside in their fancy clothes with nowhere to go." I set the mug down. "What do you mean shut down?" "Apparently," Tyler said, "the reservation was canceled. Jess thought it was fully paid, but the venue says only a deposit was made, and without the full payment, the contract auto-canceled this morning." I closed my eyes and exhaled. Right, the deposit. I'd made it months ago to secure the date when Jessica begged me for help, but per the contract, the remaining balance was due the day before the event. "No payment, no party. Guess she assumed you'd handle it," Tyler added. My phone lit up with another call. "Jessica." I stared at the screen for a moment, debating whether to answer. Curiosity won. "Yeah," I said, answering. "You unbelievable piece of work," she yelled. "The venue is closed. Everyone's standing here like idiots. How could you do this to me?" I rubbed my temple. "I didn't do anything, Jess. I paid the deposit, like we agreed. The rest was due yesterday. You were supposed to pay it," she screeched. "No," I said, my voice firm. "You assumed I would. You cut me out, remember?" There was a pause, then a choke sob. "You ruined my wedding." I heard commotion in the background. Guests murmuring, cars pulling away, someone asking loudly if the reception was canceled too. "No, Jess," I said, feeling the weight of years of dismissal settle into place. "You ruined it when you decided I wasn't good enough to be there, but expected me to bankroll the whole thing anyway." I hung up and silenced the phone. It buzzed relentlessly. Mom, Dad, Jessica again, but I ignored them all. Tyler texted me a photo a few minutes later. It showed a cluster of confused, overdressed guests standing by the locked venue doors. Jessica was in the center of the frame, her wedding dress billowing like a deflated marshmallow as she yelled into her phone. "Hell of a show," Tyler wrote. I chuckled, shook my head, and took another sip of my coffee. The shop smelled like oil and freedom. I fished a chocolate donut out of the break room box and took a bite. Somewhere across town, My family's carefully curated social image was collapsing. And for once, it had nothing to do with me. The fallout from the wedding fiasco didn't take long to spread. By the next morning, social media was flooded with blurry videos of Jessica's impromptu backyard ceremony at Aunt Linda's house. The folding chairs were mismatched. The music was courtesy of a Bluetooth speaker that kept cutting out, and the cake was a half-melted grocery store sheet cake with "Happy Wedding" scrawled in blue icing. The hashtag wedding disaster was already trending. Tyler sent me the highlight reel. Guests standing around awkwardly in their formal clothes, Jessica sobbing through her vows while Uncle Dave tried to untangle the extension cords, and the officiant reading the ceremony script from his phone while swatting away mosquitoes. The caption: "When Plan A fails, and Plan B is just sad." Someone commented, "Looks like the kind of wedding where the reception serves microwave pizza rolls." I watched the video 3 times, each time swinging between amusement and an uncomfortable twinge of guilt. This was exactly what Jessica feared most: public embarrassment. And here it was, documented from multiple angles. The phone buzzed. The ringtone blared Lynyrd Skynyrd's "Sweet Home Alabama," Mom's signature call sign. "We need to talk," she said when I picked up. "About the wedding, the family, everything." Her tone had that familiar weight of disappointment, like when I scratched Dad's truck with my bike as a kid. "I'm at the shop," I said. "Come by if you want." An hour later, Mom and Dad walked in. Dad lingered near the door, while Mom marched up to the counter. "How could you let this happen?" she asked, voice trembling. "Let it happen?" I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't plan the wedding, or forget to pay the bill." You knew they'd cancel." "Yeah," I said, leaning on the counter, "because I read the contract." "We're family, Mike," she said, softening her tone. "Families stick together." "We're family when you need something," I said, shaking my head. "Every call I get from you is about money. Every conversation with Jess is about what I can do for her. That's not family. It's a business transaction with a guilt trip bonus." "You're being dramatic," Dad muttered from the doorway. "Am I?" I said, turning toward him. "When was the last time we talked about anything other than Jessica's wedding or my shop bill? Or when I was going to get married and give you grandkids?" He shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Mom's eyes glistened. "We love you, Michael." "Maybe," I said, exhaling, "but you don't respect me. And I'm done. Done. Yeah, done." I grabbed a rag and wiped my hands. "I'm stepping back. No more money. No more phone calls about who needs what. I'm out." Mom opened her mouth to protest, but Dad put a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go," he said quietly. I watched them walk out. Mom's had bowed. Dad's steps heavy. The door closed behind them with a hollow click. That night, Tyler sent me one last video. Jessica, makeup streaked, sitting alone on a lawn chair while guests trickled out. "You okay?" Tyler's voice asked from behind the camera. I didn't think he'd actually walk away," Jessica said, voice cracking. I turned off my phone and stared at the dark screen. Relief washed over me, but beneath it, a dull ache lingered. Letting go of family shouldn't feel like freedom, but here I was, breathing easier than I had in years. A year passed, and life looked completely different. My auto shop was busier than ever. Appointments booked out for weeks, a new hydraulic lift installed, and a fresh coat of paint on the walls. I'd even hired a receptionist, Carla, who somehow managed to keep the chaos in check with a smile and a steady supply of Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Business was booming, but more importantly, I felt lighter. The constant weight of family drama had lifted, replaced by the straightforward satisfaction of fixing cars, cracking jokes with customers about football and barbecue recipes, and heading home to an apartment that didn't smell like stress. One afternoon, while tightening a lug nut on a Chevy Silverado, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and glanced at the screen. Mom. The ringtone was a classic twang of Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire, a sound I hadn't heard in months. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to the message. "Hi, Mike. It's Mom. We were just wondering how you've been. Give us a call when you can." No mention of money, no thinly veiled guilt trips, just curiosity. Or maybe loneliness. I considered calling back, but shook my head. I wasn't ready to reopen that door. Not yet. That night, Tyler texted me a meme. "When you cut off the family drama and start living your best life." It showed a guy sipping a pina colada on a beach with zero worries, and the caption, "Me after changing my number." I laughed out loud. "How's the fam?" Tyler added. "Quiet," I replied. "Just the way I like it." The next morning, I walked into the shop to find Carla organizing invoices. "Morning, boss," she said. "Oh, your mom called again." I groaned. "Did she leave a message?" "Nope. Just said she hoped you were doing well." I said, tossing my jacket on a hook. "Guess I should call her back." "You gonna?" Carla asked, arching an eyebrow. "Eventually," I said, then grinned. "Maybe in another year." Carla laughed and went back to her paperwork. By lunchtime, I was under the hood of a Mustang when a customer walked in, a man about my age, holding a set of keys with a sheepish expression. "Hey," he said, "my wife says I need to stop ignoring the check engine light." I chuckled. "Yeah, wives usually know best. Let's take a look." As I worked, we swapped stories about stubborn cars, tailgate parties, and even more stubborn relatives. It felt good to connect with someone who didn't know me as the guy who ruined Jessica's wedding. Later that evening, I sat on my apartment balcony with a cold beer, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the occasional shout from a neighbor arguing about the Yankees. The city lights twinkled like a light-bright board from my childhood. My phone buzzed again. Mom. This time I answered. "Hey," I said. "Michael," she said, her voice surprised. "I didn't think you'd pick up." "Yeah, well," I said, taking a sip of beer. Thought I'd shake things up. There was an awkward pause. "We just miss you," she said. I sighed, the familiar tug of guilt pressing on my chest. "I miss the idea of us," I said, "but not the way it was." "We've been trying," she said. "I know," I replied, "but I'm not the family ATM anymore." "I get it," she whispered. I wasn't sure if she really did, but I appreciated the effort. After hanging up, I sat there a while longer, letting the cool night air wash over me. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I wasn't chasing approval or signing checks to buy a spot at a table that never really had a seat for me. I built something solid, a business, a sense of self-respect, and a life free from the endless demands of people who only called when they needed something. I wasn't a bank. I wasn't a scapegoat. I was just Mike. And for the first time, that was more than enough.